Mike, Mike. It's Hump Day! How are you doing tonight?
Sure is. Yeah.
How are you doing, Mike?
Oh, how's it? Good, you?
Not terrible, man. We're killing it. Kicking it back. Enjoying the game. Enjoying the games that we've had. I think we've had some good college football here every day when there's not NFL on. Looking good on all of that stuff. But for you, man, tell us what you've been up to.
Just been kicking it here in Huntington, West Virginia, being in the land of the Thundering Herd. On a 3-game skid right now after a hot start. Going to Coastal this weekend in a battle where each team's best player may not play because of injury. So for the Herd, Rasheen Ali missed last week, uncertain for this Saturday. And for Coastal, Grayson McCall it sounds doubtful. So
Yeah.
uncertain those teams. But yeah, just teaching here. And watching ball, yeah, we had a couple good games last night. Well, one, the Liberty Western Kentucky game was fun. Liberty's a heck of a team. I actually didn't watch the New Mexico State Louisiana Tech game. I saw highlights, but that's not the one I was tuned into, though. Score-wise, it was very close. That Tech team is all over the place. Like, sometimes they're doing great things, sometimes not, but excited to be here tonight, and we have a couple Wednesday games on after our show will be done. We got Jacksonville State looking very good under Rich Rod in year one in the FBS playing Florida International. And in the other game, we have another first-year FBS team, Sam Houston State, playing UTEP. And Sam Houston trying to get their first win at home in a game where they're actually favored in, despite being 0-7.
Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, so it should be a good one, a good week of games. Yeah, I'm not sure about the Sam Houston State one. It's neither one of these games I want to touch tonight. Personally, I'm leaving them alone.
I had on my early list of 9-10 games, I had put Jacksonville State on there, but the spread continually kept climbing up, and it got to the point where I didn't have faith. When it got to 8.5, 9, I wasn't going to touch it.
Yeah, no, I wasn't. I did hit the money line last night on New Mexico State. They were underdogs when I got it. By the time the game kicked, it had swung like 4 points.
Yeah,
and they were favorites, but I got them at underdog odds, so I was happy about that. Got on it early enough. Now last week, the score we're still tied, Mike.
We are. Yes, we were 2-2 last week.
Yep, so 10 points each out. We're still now deadlocked for the last 3 weeks.
60. Yeah.
Yep, deadlocked the last 3 weeks at an absolute tie. And again, just a quick reminder, we do have the opportunity for a double challenge.
Yeah.
Only can be used on one game, and whoever gets to it first can use it. So keep that in mind, Mike.
Yep. No, I will.
That might be the tiebreaker this week. If we end up doing, because it's been pretty consistent. We've been doing 4 challenges here.
Yeah.
Been very consistent on that.
I'm trying to go back to last week. I know there were the 4 challenges. I won on Miami. They won that game in overtime, and then Ole Miss covered against Auburn. You beat me in the 2 early ones, I remember. But I am forgetting.
Got to consult the phones.
Yeah. It's escaping me. Oh, Nevada, San Diego State was one of them you got me on. And then...
Yeah, Nevada covered against San Diego State.
Yes,
in fact, they won that game outright.
They did, yeah.
They shut out. I was talking about how abysmal San Diego State was, and they did score a point, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, you're right. Yes.
And then Georgia Tech beat Boston College. Boston College beat Georgia Tech.
Other way around.
Outright. Yep. Which you were on Georgia Tech at -4.5.
I was. Yeah.
Which that was interesting. I didn't expect you to come straight out with the whole Boston College sucks this year. They're terrible. I was like, well, Georgia Tech's not exactly great either.
No, they had and yeah, in hindsight after that one, I think they just got lucky against Miami and their other times where they were looking good might have just been a circumstance of the schedule more than them being that good. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think when you're an ACC team and you get blown out by Bowling Green, that you got some problems.
Yeah.
You got some real problems there that you got to work on. And that was what it was for me with Georgia Tech. So,
yeah,
but, I mean, hey, Ole Miss takes down Auburn. That's a huge game. That's a historic game for Ole Miss. It's the first time they beat Auburn back-to-back years since 1952.
Yep. Yeah, I remember you said that last week, and it's weird. I had like the two of the games last week, the two we just talked about. I was probably more wrong about San Diego State than I've been any game this year, but I was probably more right about the Ole Miss because I said I think they cover, but barely win by more than that. So it's weird how I hit on one and was just totally off on the other one. Just one of those things.
It is what it is, Mike.
Yeah,
this is the nature of college football betting. Hey, is there anything that you wanted to get into before we start going through the rounds?
We had one of the games of the year last week, Ohio State, Penn State, and I don't know what to make of that. Penn State offense couldn't do anything. They appeared to have the momentum shift early when they had the defensive fumble return for a touchdown. Then it gets called back. Totally a game shifter. Penn State's probably out of the title race now. Ohio State, do you think they have a chance to beat Michigan? Or do you think they will?
So that's a good thing to get into right here because we didn't touch on this last week. It depends if Michigan has any penalties with this pending investigation.
Yeah, I don't see any in-season penalties happening. Not this season, anyway.
Still a distraction.
It is, absolutely.
It's a huge distraction.
It's going to be over their head until the end of the season. That is absolutely right.
And this bye week for them couldn't have come at a better time.
Yeah.
They get to sit back. They don't have a game this week. And so if the signs stealing thing, if you can call it a scandal, because I don't know what your opinion is. Mine is this is ridiculous, personally.
Yeah, one thing that's a big tell for me, you don't hear any other opposing coaches calling it out or condemning what's going on. That tells me it's either not something that bothers them or something they feel like is widespread and is being overblown. So
and it's funny because I think I made this comment on Twitter. I said that I've seen high school coaches mid-game figure out the signals on the other side. So
yeah,
sometimes the signals aren't that hard to decipher.
Not at all.
And so that comes back to if you don't want your signal stolen, then get the headset put in your quarterback's helmet.
And I think the argument to that would be if you can visually understand the signs and then go off of that, that's okay. It's the videotaping them at another game not involving you that they have a problem with. I understand that argument a little more, but I still don't know where I fall on how big of a deal it is.
Yeah, is it actually something that's is it a penalty? Is it a violation of any rule?
If they were videotaping, it is. But beyond that, we have little, they've made a big deal. Well, he went to all these games and, so on.
You send people to games all the time. Yeah.
Exactly. That's probably what he was doing, but we can't condemn someone and punish them based on probablys either.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but it is a distraction. I think that if it continues to persist through the rest of the year as strongly as it is right now, it doesn't die down during the bye week. I do wonder if they come into Ohio State and aren't able to take care of business. I do wonder.
Yeah. And they still have Penn State to take care of, too, which based on how Penn State looked, you'd think Michigan would, but with something like that hanging over your head, you never know.
And is Michigan at home against Penn State this year? I got to look.
No, it's in Happy Valley.
Yeah, so that's the other thing. We saw this Penn State team struggle on the road. That's a tough place to go into.
It is.
Ohio State in Columbus and play there. Penn State's just as equally as hard to go into and play at.
Yep.
So that's a huge part of this as well. But what do I know?
Yeah, Michigan, they looking at their 4 games, they got Purdue at home, at Penn State, at Maryland, then Ohio State at home.
I do wonder if that comes to bite them.
Yeah. Another interesting one, the at Maryland, a game by all accounts they should win. Maryland's given them problems the last couple of years, so they have kept it close.
Maryland's given a lot of people problems the last couple of years.
Yeah. They're one of those teams, they're in every game. They just can't seem to beat good teams for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you ready to get into the rounds here, man?
I am. I don't think I'm sure we'll talk about the Heisman thing at the end, but beyond that, I don't have anything else to talk about. Yeah, I think we're all right.
Starting things off, you like UCF at -6.5 over West Virginia.
I do like UCF at home. They are, and this will be a theme that we'll talk about, or I'll talk about a few times tonight. Totally different team when their QB is in. With Plumlee, they are a good offense. They're going to do a lot of things. Gus is a good coach. He knows how to show you a lot of different looks while keeping the same base plays. They're going to use tight ends, H's. They're going to move guys around in motion to get angles on you and blocking. Their receivers, Javon Baker's a good player. They're running the ball well, and I think West Virginia might be on the downslope too. These are 2 teams that could be trending in different directions. UCF, it's tough to gauge. Like, just looking at their offense on the whole, it's not very impressive. But when you look at when Plumlee's in, it is pretty impressive. So they're running the ball well when he's in. He threw it all right. I think he can do a little better there. And where there's a big difference with UCF, I looked at in this one, 3rd and 4th down conversions and inside the red zone. When Plumlee's in, they're really good. And they were really bad on 3rd downs without him. So for that, I like UCF at home to win by a touchdown. I don't know. I don't think it'll be by much more, but I think they win by a score.
So I was looking at this matchup, and it's interesting because the visitors covered both of these meetings in prior instances. It's been a long time since they've played. Obviously, this is UCF's first year in the Big 12. West Virginia has been in the Big 12 for a little while now. But so that was the first thing that popped at me. The next thing is UCF has not won a conference game yet this year.
Yeah.
They are winless. Now, granted, they played their best conference game last week against Oklahoma. Came down to a 2-point conversion they were unable to capitalize on with a really weird play call.
They did. The running back went out for a swing pass. They threw it behind the line of scrimmage a backwards pass, and then he was going to throw it again, but Oklahoma.
But they were man. They were man coverage and not
exactly.
zone.
Yeah.
So that took that one away, and they pursued it down really, really well, and was able to shut that down. So I thought last week watching that game that it was the most interesting thing about that game last week was the fact that it was Brent Venable's defense against Gus Malzahn's offense.
Yeah.
And Malzahn's offense may be the best one in terms of how you're equipped to handle what Venables is going to do to you. So when I think that there were a lot of positive things that came out of that. West Virginia is going to play this safe. They're going to try to keep everything in front of them. They're going to make UCF drive the field with long drives. Then they're going to come out. They've got a really explosive offense themselves this year. We kind of forget they've scored. Granted, they've lost both of their last games, but they've scored 39 and 34 points in those games.
Yeah, West Virginia might have the best offensive line in that conference. They return almost everybody up front, and with Donaldson, they've moved the ball. He's a good player, and they've even had a few other guys run the ball as well.
Yeah, so and they've had guys pop at wide receiver this year too, between Devin Carter transferring in. Hudson Clement, Cole Taylor transferred in from LSU as well. Like they've got some really solid pieces, and so for all of those reasons, I got to challenge you, Hughes. I got to start things off here.
Okay.
I'm challenging this one because I think West Virginia is a much better team than we're giving them credit for. And I'm not positive that UCF even wins this game.
Okay. Yeah,
Challenged.
I got you there. That's makes sense. I think all them are really competitive and close this week, so it could make for some interesting challenges.
Oh yeah, it's going to be interesting.
And I might be too quick to fade West Virginia like I did with BC before too, but we'll see what happens.
I like North Carolina State at plus 10 over Clemson. Now, obviously, I took Clemson last week. That burned me. They lost. And, the thing that we've seen consistently from Clemson is that this offense is abysmal. It's struggling. It has no reason to. They should have it all together. When you look at the prospects that are coming off of this team from an NFL standpoint, they're loaded. They got a lot of guys that are going to be really good in the NFL. And they're just not gelling. I don't know if it's Garrett Riley. I don't know if it's Cade Klubnik. But somewhere in this offense, they're struggling. Defensively, they're really good. And North Carolina State's been struggling on offense, so I think this is a very low-scoring slugfest.
Yeah.
And I don't think Clemson's ever able to really pull away. I like the plus 10.
Yeah, I understand that one. This team, for me, is too unpredictable. Clemson, I'm talking about. I don't... Defensively, I don't think NC State will score much. They haven't on anybody, and... with Morrison at QB, I'm not a big fan. In this game, say the roles were reversed, I don't think I would have picked either one of these teams to win by more than one possession against anybody. Unless it was any conference team anyway. I mean, they're just uninspiring. Clemson looked good against Miami for stretches, then just looked awful at stretches. NC State can't throw the ball deep, and defensively, they're usually solid. This is one of Doran's worst teams he's had in a while, and he's a guy that I've praised a lot. So, yeah, for those reasons, I don't trust either team enough to touch this one.
Fair enough. Yeah, and we just mentioned Devin Carter. He was with North Carolina State. He was their deep threat last year. Yeah. He's at West Virginia now. I think that's a huge part of what their struggles have been as well, on top of Devin Leary going to Kentucky. I think that hurt them a lot, too.
Yeah, they brought Brennan Armstrong in, who has now been benched, and he was one of the more highly sought-after QBs in the portal. Doesn't even have the job anymore.
So we move into round 2. Mike, you like Eastern Michigan at minus 2.5 over Western Michigan.
Plus 2.5.
Is it plus?
That is a misnomer. Yes, plus 2.5.
My bad.
But no worries. This game initially opened as a pick'em, and I was going to pick EMU, or I had EMU on the short list. Then, when that toggled in their favor, I was all over it. Both of these teams are pretty bad football teams, like most of the MAC is this year. That conference was absolutely ravaged by the portal. Toledo's decent. Miami, Ohio was looking good, and now Gabbard is hurt. And Ohio was okay. But the rest of that conference is very mid. Kent State and Buffalo, we talked about that game last week. Neither of those teams can buy a W unless when they play each other. Bowling Green, they beat Georgia Tech, can't beat anybody else. Akron, not very mid. That conference on the whole is down. And in this game, I don't have a lot of faith in either team. But I like Chris Creighton to get this done over Lance Taylor's Western Michigan squad. EMU is defensively a lot better. They are not as good offensively. Western Michigan is getting over 100 yards more per game total offense than Eastern is. But Eastern is not allowing many rushing yards, and they're not allowing many passing yards. Passing defense is where EMU has really excelled, and they're doing well there. They lost a tight one to Northern Illinois last week. Before that, they beat Kent State, Ball State. two teams who are not very good. But I like EMU in this one, especially there at home, and home underdog against a team like this. I'll take them.
No, yeah, I'm right there with you. I like it. I liked it at -2.5. So I was gonna. If it's +2.5, I'm taking it. Absolutely, I'm right there with you. I think that the first thing that's really interesting is that Eastern Michigan's won 4 straight in this series for the first time since the series started in 1906. So they're on a roll against Western Michigan. They've had their number here the last few years. I think that Western Michigan's missing some pieces that they need, especially on the defensive side. They got a really nice edge rusher, but that's about it. And this is not a team that's going to throw the ball a lot. Eastern Michigan, they're going to run the ball. They're going to run it straight up the middle. They're going to try to be more physical, and I think they're going to be able to do that. So I like them winning this game outright.
I feel like this game probably ends up like a 20-14, 17-10 type of minimal possessions, minimal scoring, field position type game. I know the wind is supposed to be excessive in this one too. I did see that. So
so a low-scoring slugfest where teams they're gonna have to run the ball to win, and Eastern Michigan wins that handedly.
Yeah,
absolutely. So I like a Memphis -7.5 over North Texas, and North Texas has been one of these teams that's been really up and down this year. Obviously, I think they're a lot better than they were when they started the year.
Yeah.
That being said, we talked about Memphis a lot because this is one of the top group of 5 teams. Mean Green are 4-17 all time against the Tigers, but this is only their 3rd meeting since 2003. And North Texas is 0-2 straight up in those meetings, 1-1 against a spread. These spreads were the one that they did not cover was a single digit, and the one that they did cover was a double digit. Now, Memphis also, this is a team that can run the ball. North Texas hasn't done a great job stopping the run this year. It may be on the road, but I like this team. I like Memphis. Ryan Silverfield's doing a great job out there.
He is.
I think that North Texas will have their hands full, and this will be too much for them to handle to stay within 1 touchdown.
Okay. I am going to challenge this one, actually. I waffled on this one, but I think in the end, more than one possession or more than a touchdown at home enticed me a little bit. And North Texas has been up and down. They've been doing a little better lately. They seem to have gotten a little healthier. And offensively doing a little better. They're throwing and running all right. They're not very one-sided on offense, which I like to see. Defensively, I am troubled by North Texas's run defense, particularly. I think they will have trouble stopping Memphis on the ground. But I don't know that Blake Watson is going to play for Memphis either. Now, they do have other good runners. It's not that's not the end-all, be-all if he's out. But this is one of those where I'm relying heavily on the trends and what the numbers say. And they say that this North Texas should come in just a little bit under that. I don't necessarily think they'll win, but I like them to lose by a touchdown or less.
Okay. Alrighty. Fair enough. And yeah, if Blake Watson doesn't play, that is a hit. But like you said, they do have a few other running backs.
They do.
I think
they
Sutton
do.
Smith, Javion Ducker, and Brandon Thomas are all really suitable guys. And if they go into a rotation with them, I think they'll be fine. Seth Hennigan's played pretty well for the most part throughout the year. I like him. I like him here a lot. So
Nice. Yeah, I don't blame you on that one.
As we get to round 3, you like Southern Miss plus 17 over Appalachian State.
I do. And for me, obviously, like looking at this spread, I think Appalachian State's going to win the game. But I don't like them to cover that many points. coming off of a loss to a team that they were better than, and with Nate Noel being injured. I don't know that they covered the 17 points. Southern Miss is very mediocre. Not mediocre is probably a compliment to the way they're playing. But Southern Miss is not a good team.
Yeah.
Wiles is not a good QB. Frank Gore Jr., we would expect to be doing better. I mean, if they had any kind of passing game. And I don't know if it was you and I talked about this, week one or before, but if they had any semblance of a passing game, it would free up Gore to do a ton more on offense. And they haven't. I mean, they just can't find a way to move it through the air. They got absolutely destroyed South Alabama 55-3. They lost to ODU in a tight one before that. And then they had two actually pretty offensively good games against Texas State and Arkansas State. But defensively, they couldn't stop either of those teams. So, I don't think that this Southern Miss team is very good. There's a possibility they don't win a conference game this year. That's where they're at. Appalachian State coming off of the loss to ODU and a close loss to Coastal in a midweek game before that. Then they beat ULM in a 1-point game. That was actually a really fun game. I only caught the end of it because I knew it was really close. They won 41-40. But this Appalachian State team isn't bad, but combined with how poor they've been on D and with Noel out, I don't trust them to cover this many points against even the Southern Miss team, who was going to limit possessions and try to slow the game down.
Yeah, that's fair. And again, when you think about Appalachian State, you think of over the last several years, they've been a very competitive, very strong team in the group
absolutely.
of five. Not this year. This is not the same Appalachian State team. This is not South Alabama rolling in there, like Southern Miss had to face last week. And when you look at Southern Miss, they haven't been particularly close. They've been pretty close in their conference matchups. 44-37, they lost to Arkansas State. 50-36, they lost to Texas State. 17-13, they lost to Old Dominion. So, and then last week, that South Alabama game was really an anomaly for them.
Yeah.
In the sense of how they've been able to control most of the Sun Belt. While they've been losses, they've been manageable losses where they've been within a couple possessions. This is a 3-possession game that they're calling for. I don't think so. So I'm right there with you. I'm not going to challenge this, and I'm not going to touch this one because if App State just has a great week, it could go the other way.
It could, yeah. And it's Southern Miss is one of those where this is an odd spot because if you look at 4 areas, Pass O, Pass D, Run O, Run D, Southern Miss can do a few of them good. They rarely do 2 of them good in the same game, though.
Right.
So I have no faith in them winning, but if they do well in one of them, it probably keeps the game close enough. So, yeah.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair. So we're on the same page there.
Yeah.
I like Louisville -7.5 over Duke. And I put 7.5. It's actually 4.5. That's my bad.
Okay.
I messed up the graphic again.
4.5 is what you sent me.
Yeah, it's 4.5. Yeah, it's 4.5. I messed it up. I was looking at that one over the top of it when I put it in there. Oops.
Oh, okay.
So, Louisville is a pretty solid team. We saw that against Notre Dame. Granted, they came back and they lost the next week to Pitt and then went into the bye week, but this is a pretty solid team. Duke is obviously pretty solid too, but what we saw last week was when Riley Leonard went down, that team was not the same.
No.
I think that if Riley Leonard has any injury semblance left, if he is not able to go, if he cannot play, if he leaves the game, Louisville runs away with it. And just like Florida State did, Louisville's got an offense that's capable of putting up those kind of points. They can obviously handle the trenches. We've seen that. And that's where Duke's really their biggest threat is defensively. I like Louisville covering 4.5 over Duke.
Yeah, this is a game where if I knew Riley Leonard was going to play, I absolutely would challenge this. But also, in that hypothetical world, you wouldn't have picked it either, probably, if you knew Riley Leonard was going to play. Yeah. So, that Duke defense, their defensive backs are pretty salty, but this Louisville team is going to score points. Jamari Thrash is a stud at receiver. Jawar Jordan, good running back. He got dinged up. I haven't heard. I don't think he's going to miss, but I did know there was some niggling injury there. Louisville's also coming off of a bye, which I think is to their benefit at this point in the year.
Yep.
So, with Leonard, and I was, up until half an hour ago, I had vigorously searched Riley Leonard's injury multiple times today to check on it, but with nothing conclusive. I can't take Duke in this spot. So, I'm with you. Louisville at home. This seems like a good spread, given the things we know. Yeah.
Yeah, and also worth pointing out, Louisville's 3-0 straight up and 2-1 against the spread versus Duke all time. It's just the third time they're meeting as ACC members together.
Different Duke team though. This Duke team is definitely a lot better than they've had in the past.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. They've done it better. They've done a great job, but Louisville has historically dominated this. In fact, last time they played was 2021. Louisville was a 20-point favorite. They won by 40. So.
Oh gosh. Wow.
So, that's where I'm at with that. I like Louisville in that. I think that their offense, they got enough speed that they're going to be able to threaten Duke pretty much the entire game.
Yeah.
Duke's not going to be able to match that. Now, you like Michigan State +7 over Minnesota.
I am. I'm a Minnesota guy, and I'm fading them hard this week. They are coming off of a very emotional and controversial win against Iowa. The first time P.J. Fleck has beaten Iowa since he's been there to win the Floyd of Rosedale traveling trophy between the two of them. And Fleck has had very consistent teams since he's been at Minnesota. This is probably the worst team he's had since his first year. I made the comment to someone yesterday or today. If Minnesota becomes bowl eligible, this will probably be the best coaching job he has done because this team is not very good. I have little faith in Minnesota to get a win here. Also, Darius Taylor, it sounds like, is injured and will not play in the game, which affects their run game so much. And Ethan Kaliakmanis is not a good thrower. Michigan State is coming off of a drubbing by Michigan. They have not won a conference game yet. They lost to Rutgers, Iowa, Maryland before that, and they also played Washington in a non-con and got absolutely destroyed. But I feel like even though there's turmoil there, they have an interim coach, Harlan Barnett, they might be settled down enough where they can play within themselves and capitalize on Minnesota in an all-time letdown spot where you're not very good off a huge emotional win and one of your primary offensive players is injured. So I don't know that Michigan State necessarily wins. I think this is a really low-scoring game like we've seen in some other Minnesota games, notably last week against Iowa. And I like Michigan State to cover this one.
And I think when you look at the Rutgers game a couple weeks ago that Michigan State played in, and they probably should have won. They blew it at the end of the game.
They did.
And Rutgers, I think, if Rutgers and Minnesota went head-to-head right now, Rutgers is probably putting a thrashing on Minnesota by two or three touchdowns. So for all of those reasons, I kind of look at this. Here's the against the spread stuff is really interesting in this matchup, like historically, because it's not a team that I don't think they play each other all that much.
No, they don't.
But so the home team is 4-3 straight up, but 2-5 against the spread.
And some of those games are probably going back 100 years because both of these teams have had football forever.
Right.
Yeah.
And the Spartans are 5-1 straight up, but 1-5 against the spread since 2010.
Interesting.
So if they're 5-1 straight up, but they're underdogs, it means that they probably cover. So I think that I actually think Michigan State's got a really good shot at winning this thing. You know, we saw a couple really good weeks from them on the road against Iowa and then Rutgers. The Iowa game they played pretty darn well in, all things considered. I like them. I like them to win this game outright, if I'm being honest. And I can't challenge you. I can't touch it.
Okay.
Now, what I do like this week is Wyoming plus 5.5 over Boise State. And so we've talked about Wyoming a lot on this show this year.
We have
called them to upset Fresno State. They did it. You called them to cover against Air Force. They did it. Now they've got Boise State. And so when you kind of look at this matchup over this year, Boise to me hasn't been that impressive. You know, when you think of Boise State, you think of those great teams. You think of the Statue of Liberty against Oklahoma. You think of all those great teams. This is not the same caliber of Boise State team that we're used to seeing. Maybe Andy Avalos is starting to lose a grip on the recruiting with the transfer portal and everything else, kind of ripping at some of their players and stuff, but their quarterback play, not consistent. Granted, they've been a little bit better once they've gotten into in-conference play. They've scored 30 points a game, at the very least, 34, 32, 35, and 30, and they're 2-2 in that stretch, which is not good when you're going up against this defense. This Wyoming defense is legit.
They are.
They're a lot better than any of these other defenses that they went up against in San Diego State, Memphis. Well, Memphis isn't a conference game, so that's my bad. San Jose State and Colorado State. Wyoming's got a better defense than all of those guys. So I think that Boise State gets limited possessions. Wyoming's able to control this thing at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. They're going to run the ball. They're going to take their shots when they're there, and they're going to cover this, if not win outright.
Yeah, Boise's had the QB roulette going. Maddox Madsen, Taylon Green both playing. Ashton Jeanty's a very good running back.
Yep.
I know I did a filter on this over the last month, 28 days. Ashton Jeanty is the leading fantasy scoring running back in our fantasy football league. He's getting about 28 points a game, but he's going to have his work cut out for him against this Wyoming defense. Their front seven is tough, and I think you hit on a good point where possessions get limited here. This is one where, just looking at the numbers, it would say maybe I should challenge it. Everything, though, I know and looked at, no. Wyoming's a good team here. I don't trust that Boise will win by a touchdown, if they win at all. Wyoming easily could, go in and get a W here. This game is in Boise, correct?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that doesn't change, where I'm coming from, because the way this Wyoming team plays, nasty in the trenches, that travels. You typically don't lose that in a hostile road environment, as opposed to some other aspects of the game. And Wyoming's they have to be the best defense in that conference, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Statistically, Air Force could be, but it's just because they're limiting possession so much that you're going to have less totals. But on a per-play basis, I would feel like I would have to say Wyoming is. So I'm with you in the Cowboys with that one.
Yeah, it's also interesting because Boise has lost just one time to Wyoming in their 17 meetings. They're 16-1.
Oh.
I think there's a really good shot they come out of here 16-2.
Yeah.
In an all-time series. Really.
Certainly could be. Yeah.
Moving into round 5. We're flying through these today.
Yeah.
So far, 2 challenges. You've got me. I've challenged you on UCF at -6.5 over West Virginia, and you've challenged me in Memphis 7.5, 7.5 over North Texas.
Yep.
You like Florida at +14.5 over Georgia.
This spread is big. Yeah. This is another one where I don't think the Gators will win outright, but they're going to be motivated for this game. They're going to be on a high like they usually won't be. We saw in the Tennessee game what happens when they're like that. And if they can run the ball well, they'll have success. Also, this Georgia offense without Bowers is an animal without some of its teeth. They are not going to be as good without Bowers in there. And the way both of these teams run the ball, or we're expecting Georgia to without Bowers, I think we're looking at another limited possession game where the field position comes into play, and we're not going to see either team open it up a ton. Both of these teams have been very risk averse in the passing game. They're not throwing interceptions, and special team wise, they're both pretty good. We could see big plays on that unit of the game. We'll see what happens there. Both teams' passing defenses are pretty good, which I think also is going to play into the teams not taking risks in the passing game. Florida's running the ball at a little over 4 yards a carry. That's pretty good, and they're finding the end zone quite a bit in the run game. Georgia running at over 5 yards a carry. So I think both these teams keep the ball on the ground a lot. I think we see a very motivated Florida that comes into this game, and that defense they have is pretty good too. I mean, that season opener against Utah, everyone was down on them afterwards, offensively, rightly so. Their defense did a decent job of stopping the run game, though, against a Utah team that runs the ball quite well. And they did not stop the run well against Kentucky. They got their ass whipped in that game. But I think that's behind them. And like I said, not saying Florida wins. I think they keep it within 14.5, though.
So this first off, did you know Billy Napier and Kirby Smart were both assistants under Nick Saban together from 2013 to 2015?
I did know that. Yes.
Yeah. So these are two guys that are very intimately familiar with each other. With that being considered, the two meetings that these two have had, is it two or is it one?
One. It would have been one as Florida and Georgia.
Okay. Yeah. One is Florida, Georgia.
It could be possible that when he was at Louisiana Lafayette, they played Georgia once, but last year, Georgia was a 23-point favorite. Georgia won by 22. Yeah.
8 of the last 9 meetings have been decided by double digits. The average the average spread between the two have been 20.5. Yeah. So
it's weird. We've dealt with a weird influx in there though that makes sense. Florida was really good and Georgia was down. Then it almost instantly swung the other way, where Florida was at their worst teams and Georgia became really good.
Mm-hmm. And Georgia, obviously they've won the college football championship the last 2 years. Yeah. So they've been undefeated in the last couple years, outside of that one loss to Alabama in 21. But they're on this crazy long winning streak right now. The other interesting thing here, as I go back to Florida, flip back over here. I look at this and I say, defensively, Florida concerns me. And the reason that they do is because this might be the slowest Florida defense that we've seen on tape. It very well may be. They don't have a lot of speed on the defensive side. And, when they got in that shootout a couple weeks ago against South Carolina, it was a shootout. It was 41-39. Yeah. And South Carolina has a lot of speed. You bring up a really good point about Brock Bowers being out, but there's another tight end that's sitting there, by the way. His name's Oscar Delp. Yeah. And then they've got a couple freshmen behind them, too, that are very, very highly touted. Pierce Sperlin. It's the 4th-ranked tight end coming out of high school, and Lawson Lucky. And that's not even mentioning Cooper Johnson either. Yeah. There's a lot of depth at that tight end position. This might be Oscar Delp's breakout game, honestly. Delp is very, very good.
Delp's good. Delp was, I think, the number 2 tight end recruit when he came out of high school.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, and he's played up to it in the time that he's been on the field.
Yes,
They've been able to.
He has looked good.
He stepped into Darnell Washington's role and played that well. Now he's going to have to step into Brock's role. I think he can play that well. Both teams on a bye week. Georgia dominating this outside of the 2020 year, this series. Yeah, I have to challenge you.
Okay.
And here's the thing, Hughes. I can't just... You went with Georgia when they played Kentucky. It was exactly the same spread, 14 points. 14 and a half. And I got to double challenge this one.
Okay.
I'm very confident that Georgia's going to cover. And I'm very confident that Florida is not going to be able to make up offensively against this Georgia defense, which is still pretty darn good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I'm double challenging this one. I think that Florida doesn't cover 14 and a half.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
I like Arizona at plus 3.5 over Oregon State. That might sound crazy when you hear it. In fact, I was kind of almost expecting you to challenge it, but there was I go back a few years.
I am challenging it, but we'll get there. Yeah.
Put their bam, it's already challenged.
Arizona's playing a lot better though, and they're a really salty team right now.
They're tough. They've got some playmakers. They've got some guys that are probably not going to be there next year on that team right now because they're playing well above the rest of the team. Between, I think, the quarterback who stepped in for Jaden DeLora, that's Noah Fafita.
Yeah.
And the wide receiver as well, Torio and McMillan.
Yeah.
Both of those guys are absolute game changers. The thing that kind of caught my attention about this is there was a few years ago, I think Justin Herbert was with Oregon. Oregon was on this roll. They were undefeated. They were playing for a national championship, and they went down to Arizona State, and they lost. And when you watch that game, I think that there's two main aspects to this. Number one is Oregon State right now, it's cold. It's cold. It's wet. They're traveling to Arizona. This game is in Arizona. They've won three of the last 5. They've won 3 of the last 5 against Oregon State going back to 2015. That is a very, very tough environment to go into when you're used to working and playing in cold, rainy, high humidity, and going to a desert where it's not cold, and it's hot, and it's dry. And I think that with Arizona playing as well as they have the last few weeks, obviously, we watched them go down to the wire against Washington. We watched them go down to the wire against USC. Both of those one-possession game losses. USC was in triple overtime. And then absolutely blowing out Washington State on the road. I like Arizona to cover 3.5.
Okay. I have already made my choice known that I will be challenging this one. This Oregon State team is about as consistent as they come right now. Their O-line is playing outstanding. They're getting multiple tight ends in the game. They're throwing efficiently. We've never seen DJU look this good. But they're leaning on the run and doing a good job of it. They're defensively not making mistakes. They got a good defensive backfield. You've mentioned Wazoo, interestingly enough. They're the one team that beat Oregon State in a higher scoring game. Since then, though, we've seen Oregon State beat Utah, Cal, and UCLA all by multiple possessions. Mm-hmm. 2 of those teams are pretty tough.
Yep.
In Utah and UCLA, they're solid defensive teams who are both going to run the ball. If Arizona can be effective in getting their guys in space, they got a shot. Because they're playing. Jed Fish is a heck of a coach. He's really got them going in the right direction. But for those reasons, what I talked about with Oregon State, I like them to win by a touchdown in this game. So I am challenging this one. Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, I like where Arizona's headed right now. Now, Oregon State obviously playing really well. Played a couple of really physical teams. Actually, 3 really physical teams. But Washington State, would you say that they're very physical?
Who?
Washington State?
I would not. No.
Would you say Arizona's very physical?
Probably more so than Wazoo, but not to the level of Oregon State or UCLA.
Maybe splashy speed is the kryptonite to Oregon
It could
State.
be. Absolutely could be. Yeah.
Yeah, that might be it. We haven't seen Oregon State play the real splashy teams yet. They still have Colorado, Washington, and Oregon on the schedule coming up down the road. So this is going to be their first real test at those types of teams because Arizona's built more like they are.
Yeah, they are. That's true. Yeah, Jed Fish. We talked about him. He's done a good job. So, one of the things I do a lot is coaching carousel type stuff, and I'd said this before. We talked about Minnesota before. If PJ Fleck were to take another job this offseason, Jed Fish is a former Gopher offensive coordinator. I think he should be one of the first guys Minnesota should target if they lose Fleck. I like Fish a lot.
Interesting. Interestingly enough. So, Heisman talk now. Actually, sorry. Challenges. We've got you're challenging me on Memphis minus 7.5 over North Texas, and as we just heard, Arizona plus 3.5 over Oregon State. I'm challenging you on UCF minus 6.5 over West Virginia, and Florida plus 14.5 over Georgia. That's a double challenge.
Yep, that'll be a 10-pointer one way or the other.
Yep, 10 points on the line there. So we're not going to be tied next week. We've got 4 challenges, including a double challenge, 25 points on the line.
Yeah, and
we will not be tied.
And we can't push on any of them either.
Nope, nothing's getting pushed. It is coming down to the wire here, Who's.
Yeah.
Week 9.
Yep.
So as we talk about the Heisman, because you this is one of the things that you really like to talk about, and I definitely find it interesting. Who is the favorite right now for the Heisman?
It is J.J. McCarthy.
Oh.
He has become the odds favorite. If the vote were today, he wouldn't win. But looking to the end of the season, he's going to be the best offensive candidate on likely an undefeated, team who's going to the college football playoff. If Michigan loses a couple games, he won't. But if you were placing a bet now, there's nobody else I'd bet on more than him. Dylan Gabriel's up there. They're going to win a lot of games. Michael Penix still could get back into it. They had, he kind of fell off. They had one bad game against Arizona State. He certainly can get back in it, especially if they keep winning all of their games. Bo Nix could probably get back in it too if they go on a heater. Quinn Ewers, I said the same thing about before. He's going to miss a month now with a shoulder injury.
Yep.
He's done. And I don't currently believe there's any running back who could get it either. So, yeah, McCarthy, Gabriel, Penix, Jordan Travis. Forgot about him. Travis could be one of them too.
When was the last time we saw a wide receiver win the Heisman?
Devontae Smith, just fairly recently, actually.
Before that.
The Desmond Howard in the early 1990s. So it had been like 27 or 28 years.
Is there a wide receiver that could maybe like a Keon Coleman type, somebody like that looks like they could be?
Coleman's had 2 games that are really bad. I mean, he had a 0-catch game and a 2-catch game. I don't think so. The receiver who is putting up ridiculous stats, but doesn't have a QB that could take away votes, Luther Burden would probably be that guy who fits that bill. In a P5 in the SEC, team is having the best year they've had in a long time. But I don't know that I'd put any receivers in the conversation at this point.
Yeah, Mizzou is where he plays. If you're not familiar with it, that team is 7-1 right now. They're about to go into the real brunt of their SEC schedule. They've got at Georgia next week. They're on the bye week this week. At Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, and then at Arkansas to wrap up the year.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Yeah, and they're if they're 7-1. You had said that. If they finish 9-3, I'll be impressed. I mean, going 2-2 in those final 4, and with that record, you would take that if you were Mizzou.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Burden's a stud. I mean, he was a number 1 receiver recruit coming out of high school. decided to stay in state. We know Mizzou's done a great job with NIL, with not just him, with everybody. So
So
he
do you
will
think that Burden stays at Mizzou next year, or does he go into the transfer portal?
I do think he stays, because if he was going to go in the portal, I think he would have done it already. If winning a national title and going to a blue blood program was high on his priorities, he would have already done that, is what I'm basing it off of.
Interesting.
And he's not going to need, in terms of NFL, he can showcase his talents right where he's at. He doesn't need to go somewhere else to be on a bigger stage either. So I do
That's
think
fair.
he stays. But he certainly will be a guy, if this hasn't already happened, the major programs that think they got a chance to win a title, they will be having the back channels contacting Luther's people to see if there's any interest, because he's that good.
No, he is
Yeah.
legit. Every time I see him, I'm just as a guy that scouts NFL prospects, I'm very excited about him next year. He's not eligible yet.
No.
He's a true sophomore, but he is very exciting.
Mizzou uses him right, too. Like, they force-feed him targets, and they should be doing that with a guy like him.
Yep.
Like, they don't try to get too cute with things.
Which is exactly what you need to do.
Yeah.
Get him the ball, get him in space, let him do things. Even not in space, he'll make catches through contact that are pretty
he's
impressive
good.
too. So, yeah, he's legit.
Yeah,
But-
he's one of those receivers where, from an NFL standpoint, there's probably not a glaring weakness in him as a prospect. He may not be elite at everything, but I don't think there's a weakness there either.
Yeah, and with his run after catch ability and the size that he has, he's
Yeah.
probably a first round pick.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I'm there with you. You remember a few years ago, Dorian Green.
Beckham. Yep. Dorial Green Beckham.
Yeah,
Yep.
Joel Green Beckham. Yeah. At Mizzou, he's way better than he was.
Yeah.
Way better of a prospect.
Yeah.
But I guess that's about all we got. Huh?
Yeah, I think so. I can't think of anything else we have to talk about.
Well, sweet. So, again, the challenges right here up on the screen where you can see them. That's what we got this week, including the double challenge. Florida plus 14.5 over Georgia. Hey, I hope you're ready to lose 25 points this week, Hughes.
Oh, that would be a disaster. Losing all 25 would be.
Yeah, put you down for the rest of the year.
At this point in the year, if either of us go down 25, it's tough to come back from that.
Yeah, and it's gonna be a risky double challenge every week, trying to throw ourselves back into the fight.
Yeah.
But we've been tight. We've been tied the last 3 weeks. Not going to be tied. I think we'll still probably be pretty tight next week.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's the beautiful thing about college football.
The history would tell us we will be. Yeah.
Well, you can follow him on Twitter at HughesmanCFB. You can follow me on Twitter at DraftVogel. Follow the show at Gridiron Eve. Back next Wednesday night, right here, Mike. For Mike Hughesman, I'm John Vogel. We'll see y'all later.